Hello, everybody. Can all of you hear me? I suppose you can. Hello, colleagues and students in Copiapó. Thank you for having me. I'm really delighted to be able to participate actively, or I should say probably relatively actively, in the 27th anniversary of the language department. I would have loved to been able to be there today in person, but obviously the second best option is this webinar. I can only wish all of you the very best. At the end, I will attach my email address so that everybody can feel free to get in touch with me that way and ask me questions in connection with the contents of this presentation, or questions on English and Spanish phonetics in general. And I'll be delighted to read your requests and, of course, answer them. Without further ado, now we'll get down to business. Making the most of your speaking voice. By speaking voice, I mean not just any kind of voice, not a singing voice, for example, but not just the voice that we use in normal everyday conversation, no, with friends and family, for example. No, what I mean is the type of voice we use, or should use at least, for professional purposes. We can think of a number of professionals who use their speaking voice in public and private events. Among them, actors and actresses when they perform on the stage, newsreaders and presenters on TV sets, and last but, well, certainly not least, we teachers, when we give lessons and lectures in the classroom. Using your speaking voice in the classroom implies that you are using your voice as a working tool. This is very important to keep in mind, so that it doesn't get damaged by extra effort. You have to learn to look after it. You have to learn how to warm up your vocal folds or vocal cords. You have to get good breath support, project your voice. You have to learn how to project your voice and articulate clearly. Do you know how to do this? Are you prepared to do this? Well, if you're not prepared, there are very good podcasts on the internet on this matter. But don't forget that your voice can also help you engage your class. That is, keep them connected. In this presentation, we will be looking at English sounds, English accentuation, rhythm, intonation, pause, speed of speech or tempo, and features of other type, which we call voice quality effects. And towards the end, I intend to put these features into practice using different types of texts. Now, if you want to explain something, we know this very well, teachers. There's nothing better than demonstrated with examples. Let's take a look at this chart. I have called it the act of communication. The act of communication involves the participation of a number of elements that belong to different categories, 3 categories. I'm showing you how many? 1, 2, 7 aspects we will be considering in this presentation. The first one is sounds. A sound, of course, is a very general term. We use it normally every day, or practically every day. It is almost a synonym of noise. Technically, a sound is a segment. We linguists and phoneticians use the word segment, which is a speech sound. that is vowels and consonant sounds. The other features are accentuation, rhythm, intonation, pause, speed of speech, and number 7, yes, voice quality. Now, let's try to organize this information. Now, here you can see that sounds belong to one particular aspect of speech. And then accentuation, rhythm, intonation, pause, and speed of speech is what we call prosodic features. And finally, voice quality is here standing on its own. It belongs to the realm of paralinguistics. This is a paralinguistic feature. We'll find out more about these, the meanings of these aspects of speech as we go along. Now comes slide 6, which I have called the act of communication. Here, I've tried to organize the previous information in some sort of way so that we have everything very clearly specified. We have categorized the various aspects. Number 1 is sounds or segments or units of sound. We think of them as separate units that we study one at a time. So, for example, when we do transcriptions, we write down each segment as an individual symbol. So each sound corresponds to one symbol, and one symbol corresponds to one sound. It is very convenient for EFL purposes to think of sounds as a bead of entities, yes, which are separate. Sounds, we say, form the segmental aspect of speech. And one very important, they are always present in speech. Notice that the box containing sound is separate from the rest of the aspects of speech. Then come 5 boxes, which I have put together under the label prosodic aspects or prosodic features. And at the end, you can see one final box, which is that of voice quality. There's one very important thing about these 3 aspects. Sounds or segments are always present in speech. They are not optional ingredients, no. Then the prosodic effects or prosodies tend to be present in speech all the time, particularly accentuation, rhythm, and intonation. They are always present in speech. Pause and speed of speech, well, they are more difficult to individualize. They are present in speech, yes, very often, but you can do without them, yes, in a way. I'll explain this at the end. And paralinguistic features come last. They are not always present in speech, more at the end. Now, what comes next? Well, we will deal with each of the 3 groups one at a time. Before moving on to the next slide, let's remember that a language implies organization. Now, what kind of organization? Languages organize themselves into systems and patterns. So we talk about the English system of phonemes, the English vowel system, the Spanish vowel system, the English consonant system, etc., etc. Now, what is a pattern? We'll be using this word more or less often in this talk. A pattern is, well, it could be, there are different types of patterns. A phonemic pattern, for example, is a pattern of phonemes. There are patterns of rhythm also, there are patterns of intonation, etc., which I will introduce later. Voice quality, as I said before, will be dealt with at the end. We will elaborate more on this notion towards the end of this session. Now comes number 7, slide number 7. We must talk about segments to begin with, but not segments in isolation, no, because we communicate normally by means of or through connected speech. And when we do this, we must take into account the so-called features of simplification: elision, assimilation, compression, linking. You can see the titles there at the top. Why do we have to consider features of simplification? And why simplification? Well, very simply, because in connected speech, sounds often undergo modifications. And this happens particularly at their ages, at the ages of words, at the beginnings and at the ends of words, which are the places where words connect with one another. Now, I'll give you a minute to familiarize with this dialogue. This is a dialogue, A, B, A, B, A, B. Two friends talking about holidays. Yes. I'll give you a few seconds to look at this. Here is the dialogue again, but this time with a few extra, with extra information. I've put some of the words that I'm interested in analyzing with you in red. Why? What do they have in common? Well, here we can see two types of situations which are different from the other words, two different, you can call them characteristics, features of connected speech. I would read this, one of the possibilities of reading this would be like this. Yeah, where did you go for your holidays? Where did you go for your holidays? Well, first we went to the mountains and then to the seaside. Well, first we went to the mountains and then to the seaside. 2 holidays. You must be rolling in it. No, I didn't pay for it. My father-in-law did. I thought you'd quarreled with your father-in-law. We've agreed to be friends. After all, he needs us and we need him. This would be a pretty lively interpretation, reading of this. Now, would you be able to identify what I've put in red here? Well, I can see a lot of weak form words, weak form pronunciations. You is a weak form word. When I say, for example, you, Peter, can you answer a question to me, please? You, when you say you with an accent, you're not saying the same kind of you that you find in this dialogue, because this is a weak form for you, simply you, a shorter version probably. For your become for your. Where did you go for your holidays? This is a big difficulty for Spanish-speaking students because we don't have such thing as weak forms. Well, first we went to the mountains and then to the seaside, to the mountains and then to the seaside. Oh, 2 holidays. You must be rolling in it. You must be not very highlighted words in this particular text, of course. You must be, where must is the new word, isn't it? Yes. Must becomes miss. No T there. This is an example of elision. The T is not pronounced there. Don't try to pronounce it. You must be rolling in it. No, I didn't pay for it. For it, instead of for it. I thought you'd quarreled with your father-in-law. This is an example of a contracted form. Your can become your very easily. I thought you'd quarrel with your father-in-law. Your father-in-law. We've agreed to be friends. We've is a contracted form. To be friends. We've agreed to be friends. After all, he needs us and we need him. Now, the important thing here is that us and him are not weak forms anymore, but strong forms, because I'm trying to convey contrast. Us and him are 2 different entities, and I need to specify that contrast. Now we turn the page over and tackle prosodies. So no more about sounds, no more about segments. Prosody involves those features of speech that do different things, different from segments. They do things to segments. This is what happens. In the first place, prosodies accompany segments, vowels and consonants, but operate independently of them because they run parallel to each other. What do I mean by this? It's like two parallel lanes that go in the same direction, for example, on a motorway or highway. That's one characteristic. They always accompany sounds. They occur together with sounds. The second characteristic of prosody is that it doesn't apply to sounds in isolation, but prosodies can normally extend over whole utterances. Let me explain this to you. We don't have a dialogue there in front of us, but I'll exemplify this by means of the following sentence. If I say, "Why do you always answer me by asking another question? I can't understand. Why do you always answer me by asking another question?" But I can also say, "Why do you always answer me by asking another question?" It's the same line, the same segments, or I've tried to produce the same segments, but this time with a different prosody. Intonation was different in the second version of this. And I can think of another version, which is, "Why do you always answer me by asking another question? Why do you always answer me by asking another question?" I've used again a third pattern of tones, a third pattern of intonation, a third intonation pattern. So again, I've pronounced all the words in the same way, or try to at least. The segmental lane is the same, but I have changed the intonation lane. And C, prosodies are always present in speech, irrespective of the length of the utterance. That is, you can't pronounce an utterance, either short or long, without, or at least without accentuation, intonation, and rhythm. Let me produce another sentence, which is, it will sound very funny to your ears. They say all is fair in love and war. I don't know if you've understood the message, the meaning of this utterance, consisting only of vowel and consonant sounds grouped together into words. They're all, yes, they're all monosyllables, but they are deprived of any prosodic information. Now, a normal, a possible rendering of this would be something like, for instance, this is just one possibility. They say all is fair in love and war. I don't know whether you agree, but this is what they say. They say all is fair in love and war. So when I add all the necessary prosodic information, I can make the meaning clear. Now, if we look at, the same dialogue we did before, we can see that prosody covers all those aspects of speech which are not explained in an ordinary phonemic transcription. There. Prosody covers all those aspects of speech which are not explained in an ordinary phonemic transcription. Yes, you can do transcriptions without any marks that show prosody. This is how we start, probably dealing with sounds. Now, prosody also cannot be written down like vowels and consonants, vowel sounds and consonant sounds. No, you can do this only if you learn a system of prosodic notation. or transcription. Vowel and consonant sounds, pitch accents, rhythmic patterns, and intonation contours are simultaneously transmitted and finally perceived by the hearer as one package, we say. Another matter of interest has to do with the links that can be established between various prosodies. Yes, prosodies normally interconnect. This simply means that there are connections between the various aspects we have mentioned. And this is why I'm referring to this with the label links that we see in diagram 11. Accentuation and vowels, accentuation and rhythm, accentuation and intonation, pause and tempo. I have included voice quality at the end again. And as I've said before, this is the last feature we will explore at the end. Let's see what happens with this kind of link, the connection between accentuation and vowels, or vowels and accentuation. There's a close connection. Basically, what I mean to say is that you can't give accents to all kinds of vowels. The accented syllables I have marked in bold type here, right? So it's the same dialogue as before, but this time there are words which appear in bold type. And you can see the type of vowel sound that receives these accents. We will also try and identify those vowels which never receive accents. This is very important. So together with learning the vowels, one of the aspects you have to learn is to remember which vowels can take accents and which vowels cannot take accents ever. This is complicated because we don't have the same system of vowels in Spanish. Our system of vowels is so simple and so few, right? You can say 5 in Spanish, 5 vowel phonemes, versus 12 pure vowels in British English, 11 in American English probably only. We just say that vowels, we refer to Spanish vowels simply as plain vowels. Yes, we have just plain vowels. How would you read this now? Dialogue again. I'm going to do exactly the same thing as before, but this time I'm trying to draw your attention to these accented words. Where, go, hole in holidays. First, moan in mountains. Then seaside in seaside. 2, roll as part of rolling. I had to underline in order to make it clearer to the eye. We have an interesting compound here, father-in-law. This is another complication, a big complication. You have to learn how to accent compounds and longer phrases. In father-in-law, there's only one accent on the first syllable. Quarreled is also accented on the first syllable, and then agreed on the last. Friends, all, he, us, we, him. Now, I'm going to go through this again, and it would sound like this. Where did you go for your holidays? Where did you go for your holidays? Or anything like that. Where go holidays? Where did you go for your holidays? Well, first we went to the mountains and then to the seaside. First went to the mountains and then to the seaside. Oh, 2 holidays. No accent on holidays this time. I don't think we'll have time to go through this extra little problem or big problem. You do not accent information which is given, which has appeared before. 2 holidays. You must be rolling in it, or you must be rolling in it. You must be rolling in it. Accent on roll. That is the only accent in the sentence. You must be rolling in it. No, I didn't pay for it. In this case, the accent goes at the very beginning. Once again, because I'm trying to establish a contrast between I and somebody else. And that somebody else comes next. My father-in-law paid for my holidays. My father-in-law did. My father-in-law did. I thought you'd quarreled with him. But instead of saying with him, I repeat the information with your father-in-law, which again, for the same reason as before, we cannot accent, because now you and I know who we are talking about. And the explanation is, well, we've agreed to be friends. We've agreed to be friends. After all, he needs us and we need him. And the last utterance is a very interesting one because it is contrastive. It's not a question of needing, but it is a question of who needs whom. He needs us and we need him. In some, we have seen that accents occur on full vowels only. In English, then, we say that we have a system of vowels consisting of two subsystems. One is the full strong vowel system, and the other one is the long short vowel system. Now, in matters of accentuation, we have to worry about vowels being full or reduced only. You may very well accent short vowels. There's nothing wrong with that. But the thing to remember is you can only accent full vowels. Now let's move on to accentuation and rhythm. They are also closely connected. Here I have two definitions to make things clearer. Accentuation is, I say, the main means by which we choose some words to stand out from others, from other words, so an accent on some words to stand out from others in the flow of speech, in connected speech. On the other hand, rhythm is the occurrence of these words which are standing out from others because of accentuation. Rhythm is the occurrence of patterns of strong and weak syllables that result from the way in which we distribute accents in an utterance. I've been distributing accents. I've been giving accents to certain syllables in some words, in certain words. We highlight, in other words, only particular syllables, or in the case of monosyllables, the only syllable there is. Now, the rhythm of an utterance depends on the distribution of accented syllables in the word. Now, we see this in the next slide. Here we have three sections. Number one, monosyllables do not show accents in dictionaries. We know this. For example, the word grass, fence, don't carry accents according to the dictionary, simply because they are monosyllables. But they can get accents in connected speech, of course. One thing is the pronunciation of the word in isolation, and quite another is the accentuation of the same word in context. Why do we do this? Well, because mainly what we do when we accent is highlight these words because they are important for meaning. As in grass, right? Grass is the thing that we want to say something about. So this happens to be, the same situation happens to grass, side, and fence. The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, don't you think? Now, according to the dictionary information, I should say the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Da-dan, 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 da-dan. Too many accents. People don't normally speak like this. I don't know whether you've noticed, I don't think you have. We do the same in Spanish. The thing is that since we learn Spanish in a different way, not by means of rules, but from listening and imitation, we're not aware of these things. In the second one, the second utterance, the dictionary doesn't give us accents for hope, for choose, for school, for close, or home. No accents at all. But in a text, I can give them accents. We normally give accents to important words, and important words are normally the words we call content words, right? Hope is a main verb. Choose is also a verb. School is a noun. Close is an adjective. Close to home, or adverbs. But instead of saying, I hope we can choose a school close to home, which is da-dan, 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 dan, da-dan, I go da-dan, da-da-da-dan, dan, da-dan. I hope we can choose a school close to home. I'm just moving into town, a new town, and I need to find a school for my children. And I hope I can choose a school close to home. I hope I can choose a school close to home. Di-da, di-di-di-da, da-da-da. Now, the third example is a different kind of situation, but it shows the same aspect of rhythmic aspect. Supposing you want to talk about the academic standards. Well, you don't say academic standards. The dictionary gives you two accents on academic, one on standards, but you don't say academic standards, which is what I've put on the left. You say what is on the right, academic standards. So the word academic becomes academic. Now, if you pay attention to English-speaking people carefully, you will notice that these things happen all the time. Another example is photographic. If you put photographic before memory in order to build a unit, a sort of collocation, what kind of memory am I talking about? A photographic memory. No, you don't say photographic memory. Hey, you have very good photographic memory. No, nobody would go like this. It doesn't sound normal. You say, so you have a photographic memory. You have a photographic. So this photographic becomes photographic. The same as, well, a photographic something else, photographic memory, a photographic mind, I suppose. Sentimental value does the same thing. You don't say sentimental value, but sentimental value. Yes, sentimental reasons. I love you for sentimental reasons. Isn't that great? Sentimental journey, a sentimental journey. So now we are in a position to understand the rhythmic principle that operates in English, and also, very importantly, in Spanish as well. Rhythmic principle. We arrange speech so that the accents occur at fairly regular intervals of time. That is to say, we try to avoid accents occurring too close to one another. English-speaking people feel the pressure to avoid accents occurring too close to one another. And even more so, to avoid consecutive accents, because they avoid, you should avoid rhythmic clashes. Let's avoid rhythmic clashes, accents that occur too close together. Accentuation and intonation is another aspect of speech which we have to understand. Here I have a question. What do you think of classical music? Now, the way I'm showing you this sentence is as if we were climbing down the stairs. Da, 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 da. This is a very normal pattern in English. Da, 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 da. Also in Spanish, at least in our kind of Spanish. What do you think of classical music? What do you think of classical music? Where the first three groups are very similar, but the last one is slightly different because it begins a kind of pitch movement different from the other pitch movements. We say then that accents tell you about tone movements, beginnings of pitch movement, changes in pitch direction, if you wish. Now, this same sentence, what do you think of classical music? Can also be said like this. What do you think of classical music? Two different patterns, we can call them now, two different intonation patterns on the same content, on the same, you can say, phonemic patterns. What do you think of classical music? I've said again, with a different intonation pattern this time. Let me see. What do you think of classical music? Yes. The third version of the same question is different from the others in that I have capitalized the words that carry the accents. Now, this shows very clearly that in all four bits of language, right, what you think of classical music. We have four tones, we say, but I don't want to go into that. What do you begins with an accent on what? Think of begins with an accent on think, and classical the same, class, and music as well. What I'm showing you here is that accents tell you where to begin a change in pitch, a change in pitch direction. And a similar thing happens here. What do you think of classical music? Da 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 da. So it can be music, music, or it can be music, music. Now the accent is on exactly the same syllable in music, but the pitch pattern is different. Pitch movement is different. So this is a sort of summary. We say that accents are the building blocks of intonation. So when we provide an utterance with accents, we indicate its intonation pattern. Now, is this all we do? No, we do more. We also indicate its accentual pattern, apart from intonation pattern, that is a pattern of accents, and also its rhythmic pattern, the pattern of prominent and non-prominent syllables. As to intonation, there are as many definitions practically of intonation as writers and authors. There are simple definitions and not so simple definitions. So we can go from the very simple ones to the more technical ones. You can also say, for instance, intonation is the way that our voice goes up and down when we speak. That is also a simple definition. Or, wait a minute, yes. Or the patterns of pitch movement that occur in utterances. Let's move over to pause. Now we move on to pause. What is a pause? Everybody can understand pause because we use the same in Spanish. I mean, the pause is a cognate, pausa, pause. Well, a pause is an interruption in the flow of speech, right? In normal speech, there are silent pauses and filled pauses. Silences, a silence is a pause, but also a kind of noise that we can produce to indicate that I'm making a pause. If I say, for instance, there's an example there in the green box. Well, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. Now, if you say it like this, you notice that I've used two different kinds of pause there. Again, well, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. Now, used prosodically, for example, to create expectancy and suspense is another use. You can use pauses then for other purposes, for purposes which are more used more often in dramatic speech. Yes, when you want to make your sentences more lively. I want to create expectancy and suspense, and I say, she opened it again carefully, as she would a bag in which she knew there lay a poisonous snake. There was the gun. I have to say that I've taken this beautiful bit of language from a book published, well, a few years ago by John Maidment and Garcia Lecumberri. I find this bit particularly useful to demonstrate pause. Again, she opened it again, carefully, as she would a bag in which she knew there lay a poisonous snake. There was the gun. 23 deals with tempo or speed of speech. And I'm going to include loudness, which we haven't mentioned before, but this is the time, I think, the right time to discuss the two together. When we analyze prosody, we have to think of, I mean, it is convenient to think of a neutral option. Everybody uses his or her regular speed of speech. There are people who normally speak faster than others and people who speak more slowly than others. And this is their personal characteristic, part of their personality. I'm not referring to that. I'm talking about a prosodic effect. In other words, use different kinds of tempo to show special effects, to produce special effects. You can slow down your tempo, or you can speed up your tempo, suddenly or gradually. Slow tempo and reduced loudness, as in this. This is a very poetic passage taken from another text that doesn't belong to me. So I'm going to say this with a slow tempo and reduced loudness, very softly then. This was just the view I had imagined. This was just the view I had imagined. The water beneath me, gently splashing against the rocks. The bay widening into the open sea. And beyond, the mountains. It was perfect. You may have noticed that when I say beyond, I used a long syllable in yond. I produced beyond with extra length. Now, the opposite is a fast tempo and increased loudness. And when you are excited or angry, you increase your loudness, and you normally use a fast tempo. This is also taken from the same course I mentioned before by Maidment and Garcia Lecumberri, Maria Luisa. I quickly jumped out of bed and ran upstairs to the spare bedroom to wake my sister up. I shook her vigorously and shouted, "Come on, Madeline, get up or we'll miss the train." As I rushed into the bathroom, I heard her mumbling, "What train?" I shouted at the top of my voice, "The train to Wales. We're supposed to be catching a train at 8:30 to go home to see Mum, remember?" Haha. So here we have two characters, the brother and his sister, Madeline. And Madeline is still, well, he's about to wake up, you see. So that's why she says, that's why she mumbles, "What train?" Yes, you normally go like this when you, very early in the morning, when you don't know who you are very well. Number 24. Yes, we've come to the last of the 7 features, a paralinguistic feature called voice quality. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm mentioning 6 different types of voicing. Now, these are produced in your larynx at the vocal folds, also in your mouth, and further down in your pharynx. They are temporarily modified. You don't normally use whisper or breathy voice or husky voice or creaky voice or falsetto. No, you normally use a neutral. I put the permanent vocal background feature of somebody's speech. That is the norm. A whisper is produced with air that has no vibration. So I'm going to say, for example, what can I say? I'm going to say, hello, Madeline, okay? Hello, Madeline, this girl we mentioned before. A neutral voice quality, neutral voice quality. Hello, Madeline. Hello, Madeline. I'm going to whisper now. Hello, Madeline. Hello, Madeline. A breathy voice would be something like, hello, Madeline. Hello, Madeline. A husky voice is a low-pitched voice, a bit rough, but not necessarily unattractive or disgusting. No. A husky voice would be something like, hello, Madeline. Hello, Madeline. Hello. A creaky voice is a type of voice in the production of which the vocal folds vibrate very slowly. And what you can hear is actually a sort of succession of taps. So a creaky voice to say, hello, Madeline, would be something like this. Hello, Madeline. Hello, Madeline. Hello, Madeline. Falsetto is the opposite, a high-pitched voice. Hello, Madeline. Hello, Madeline. Hello. Hello. The first syllable there was falsetto voice. Hello, Madeline. Hello. You can jump from one to the other. And now we've come to the last part. We are going to interpret texts. And I've chosen two. We are coming to an end very soon. The first paragraph is this. This is something somebody is telling us about what he feels about proverbs. So it is a kind of description. I'm going to use a pretty normal voice, but I'll try to make it sound alive. I'll try to go like this, for example. There isn't just one way. There are many ways. There are many ways of saying things as there are people doing the talking, the speaking. I've read that many proverbs originate in the Bible or are based on common sense sometimes. In fact, a lot of them are almost exactly the same in English and Spanish. For instance, after a storm comes a calm. Charity begins at home, or there's no accounting for tastes. One of my favorites, however, doesn't seem to correspond exactly. Every cloud has a silver lining. For me, it's more like a line taken from a poem. Shall we go once again? Now, I can't do exactly the same thing because nobody says the same thing in exactly the same way. No, unless you were listening to a recording. Well, I've read that many proverbs originate in the Bible or are based on common sense. In fact, a lot of them are almost exactly the same in English and Spanish. For instance, after a storm comes a calm. Charity begins at home. Or there's no accounting for tastes. One of my favorites, however, doesn't seem to correspond exactly. Every cloud has a silver lining. For me, it's more like a line taken from a poem. And this is the sort of icing on the cake. I'm going to try and give you my version of the first few paragraphs in The Selfish Giant, written by another giant, who was not selfish at all, Oscar Wilde. I would go something like this. Here, notice that this is a different kind of text, not only longer than the others, than the previous one, but in this case, I don't know if you're familiar with this text, but here very clearly I can think of three different characters. One is the reader, the person who narrates, the narrator. The other one is the giant, who is also going to do some speaking, and the children. There are three different characters. And if you want to make it sound engaging, as I said at the beginning, you may go like this. I'm going to try and do different voices. Okay, one is the neutral voice, the person who tells the story, the narrator, but then the giant. What kind of a voice do you think a giant has? Well, I've never heard a giant do any talking, but I can imagine what they sound like, or they would sound like if they existed. And the boys, well, we are very familiar with boys. Children, yes, boys and girls. I don't know whether they're boys and girls, boys or girls. It doesn't matter. Children. Every afternoon, as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there, over the grass, stood beautiful flowers like stars. And there were 12 peach trees that in the springtime broke out in the delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in the autumn bore rich fruit. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. How happy we are here, they cried to each other. One day the giant came back. He'd been to visit his friend, the Cornish ogre, and had stayed with him for 7 years. After the 7 years were over, he'd said all that he had to say, for his conversation was limited, and he determined to return to his own garden. To his own castle. When he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing here?" he cried in a very gruff voice, and the children ran away. "My own garden is my own garden," said the giant. "Anyone can understand that, and I will allow nobody to play in it but myself." So he built a high wall all round it and put up a notice board. "Trespassers will be prosecuted." He was a very selfish giant. The poor children had now nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they did not like it. They used to wander round the high walls when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside. How happy we were there, they said to each other. I would like to finish this talk with a sort of summary in order to say what reading aloud implies. So I think next time you decide to present a text to a class, don't forget to do it with love, with intensity, passion. Become some kind of a model reader. You have to choose the right text. You have to be able to analyze the text, technically speaking. You have to give your own interpretation of the text. If you do that, you will enrich it. What I mean, in other words, is you have to be able to build your own story and, if possible, leave your personal mark on the story to be told. I'm showing you now a list of blogs and videos which you can find on the internet. John Maitland, John Wells, Jack Winsor Lewis, and the UCL resources, University College London, where phonetics started in Britain. From these 4 sources, you can get that information there. Blogs containing very useful information, discussions of all types. Some of them are pretty long. I mean, they went for a long time, like John Wells's blog. And the good thing is that you can still get it. Jack Winsor Lewis is still writing a bit less probably than before, less frequently, but his page is full of very useful information, the same as John Wells's and John Maitland's. Now, you have tutorials. You can find even this kind of thing, which are very useful. You know what a tutorial is? This is a class, a practical class to individuals, practically. Well, yes, you open this and you will train your ears. You can learn to say things and be corrected. The next 2 items, Jeff Lindsay and Jane Setter. They are phoneticians. They are professors who have their own YouTube channels, we can say. They've started their own channels. I suggest you open this frequently. Jeff's materials are very short, very self-contained. He is very fond of solving one problem at a time. Sorry, one problem at a time. Well, pronunciations of past tenses, for example. Some people have problems with past tenses. Accentuation in words, right? In compounds and phrases, things like that. And Jane Setter has, she has a collection of videos. Once you start looking at one, you won't stop watching the others. She's just put out a book which summarizes what I've done today. The title of the book is Your Voice Speaks Volumes. And the last 2 are places where you can get fonts. Sometimes students would like to have phonetic fonts on their computers. Well, I'm providing you here with 2 different addresses, for free, of course, for free. Right, the last thing I want to say is don't forget to write to me if you feel the need, the desperate need, or the need simply to clear up problems. I'll be here if you want to share opinions or submit your sample recordings of the materials we've used. Yes, send me your own versions, your recordings, or write to me just to say hello. And I want to say thank you now in 4 different ways, 4 or 5. Okay, I can say thank you. I can also say thank you. I can also say thank you or thank you. What have I just done? Well, I've used the same phonemic patterns. It's always the same sounds. The same rhythmic pattern, the same accentuation patterns. I'm always accenting the same words, thank, thank, thank. But I've used different intonation patterns on them. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.